Welcome back in, 7:24 on this Monday night edition of Straight Up with Sturge, coming to you live from Smoke on the Water, and let's go straight to the guest lines. Let's bring on Zach Barnett of FootballScoop.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach, Z-A-C-H _Barnett, B-A-R-N-E-T-T. Zach, how we doing tonight, all the way over from the Lone Star State?
Doing very well. Thank you all for having me on.
Well, it looks like we can provide you with a little news. You know, one thing that we were going to talk to you about was, you know, a little bit about what you view from Clemson coming from the middle part of the country. And one of the biggest storylines has been the quarterback race between Cole Stout and Chad Kelly, and then the incoming freshman Deshaun Watson. Well, it's amazing how these things settle themselves out, and Chad Kelly no longer part of the Clemson football program as of about 2 hours ago. Your thoughts?
I know, it's a funny thing. I swear not 10 minutes after y'all asked me to come on the show, I started thinking about, who's going to be Clemson's quarterback, and then Chad Kelly sorted that out for me. I had a chance to listen to Chad Morris speak at the AFCA Coaches Convention this past January. I could not have been more impressed. I think the Tigers will be in great hands no matter who's quarterbacking that thing. That said, I think I'd be very surprised if Cole Stout didn't take the first snap on day one.
Oh yeah.
Coaches like consistency. They like stability, and that's what Stout is. But if the Clemson campus is like every other campus in college football, Deshaun Watson will be the most popular person in Death Valley every Saturday.
Zach, Price Atkinson sitting in with Mark tonight. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And you kind of hit on something I was going to ask you next about, when you have a senior like this and you start talking about controversies. There's no controversy; it's a competition. But that senior really traditionally has got to get beat out, and especially when you're talking about a stud freshman coming in who really has only been through, one spring practice in August to come. It's really difficult to ask for a kid who's been through 2 sets of practices to come in and beat out a senior who's been there for 4 years and is so experienced, right?
Right. I think, exactly what I said earlier. Coaches like to know what they're going to get from a guy, and that's, very true freshmen at all are able to offer that. I think if they wanted to, I think Dabo and his staff have the political with their fan base to kind of say, hey, we're going to go with Deshaun. We believe in him. Might be kind of a long year, but I'd be very surprised if Cole's not the guy to start.
Well, speaking of having to replace guys under center, another team and 2 other teams in the area, the Georgia Bulldogs, Aaron Murray, quarterback's gone over in Athens, and then down the road from us, Jadeveon Clowney, another star player for the Gamecocks. Talk about Georgia and South Carolina when we're talking about replacing, really key players like Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins. What Clemson will have to do, talk about the replacement of Aaron Murray over in Athens, just an hour and a half down the road, and then an hour and a half down the other way, what South Carolina is going to be doing to replace Jadeveon Clowney.
Well, I think there's, in any fan base, there's a certain segment that talks themselves into how they'll be better off without the guy that's been here for the past half decade, it seems like. And the one word of caution I'll give is about 2010, it was about this time in 2010 when Colt McCoy had just left Texas, and he really hadn't played well the previous year against Oklahoma and Nebraska. And people started thinking to themselves, well, Garrett Gilbert can certainly replace what Colt did against Oklahoma and Nebraska, and then against everybody else he'll be fine. So, we've got this. And Texas was not fine at all. So I think, when you have one of those guys, it kind of takes losing them to realize what you had. But I think, I'm an absolute Todd Gurley fanboy. I think they'll lean on him as much as they can. And I'm so impressed with what Steve Spurrier's done. I think South Carolina's defense will still be one of the best in the country.
We're talking with Zach Barnett of FootballScoop.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Zach_Barnett. Now, Zach, you're a Texas grad. You're based out of the Lone Star State. Texas held, I don't want to call the nation hostage for about 6 weeks at the end of last year while they were going through their coaching search before they end up landing Charlie Strong there in Austin. How is that going? Price and I had a little bit of concern about that hire, strictly in the fact that we knew Charlie doesn't like to really deal with the media, even even boosters to a certain extent. But he's going to have to change that at Texas. How's that transition been? And then on the flip side, what's going on over in College Station as the Aggies look to replace Johnny Manziel at quarterback?
Well, at Texas, I think I've told people I don't really know. I can't promise that Charlie Strong's going to win a national title or even a Big 12, but I love what Steve Patterson was taking behind the hire. I think, Mac Brown had been here so long that he convinced people that being, a political candidate was the first and foremost job of being the Texas head coach, when really Charlie's all about winning. He's about football, first, second, third, and fourth. And I think, the people that meet him comes across him as a very genuine guy. I've read reports about, the players show up for practice at 5:30 in the morning, and Charlie's already drenched in sweat, just done his workout, and that didn't happen under Mac. So I think he's going to win people over. It's just a matter of having the opportunity to do that. He just hasn't been here very long, and that's something that Sumlin and Bryles and Kingsbury and Stoops and Gundy are going to remind everybody of. But I think he deserves some time. At A&M, I really like Jake Spavital. Kevin Sumlin's been successful everywhere he goes. I think their offense will obviously look a lot different without Manziel, but I would be very shocked if it's not successful. And I really think A&M will be better this year than they were last year.
Zach, let me ask you about another team in the Lone Star State and that had a just really kind of a lot of ways came out of nowhere, but captured the nation's attention at times just for the gaudy numbers they were able to put up at times last year, and that's the Baylor Bears. What in this next year, can Baylor build off of 11-2 with Art Briles? In a lot of ways, kind of in a little surprised that he's back. I thought Texas would have given him a really harder look for the Texas job. But, what about Baylor this coming season? What do you think? Are they going to be able to duplicate that 11-2 success they had last year? I mean, the non-conference schedule certainly is light again to get them off off to a strong start. What do you think of Baylor going into the season?
Well, I think last year what separated Baylor from every other Art Briles team was the defense. The offense drew the headlines toward 70 every week of September, but they really had the Big 12's best defense for most of the season, and a lot of those key guys are gone. So, one thing about Baylor is it's very dependent on their home road schedule. If they could play every game in Waco, they would win the national championship. I have no doubt about that. But obviously they can't. They have to go to Austin. They have to go to Norman. So I think they'll be a contender. I would project as of April 14th they'd be in the 10-2, 9-3 range.
Zach, I want to follow up about Baylor because I believe they move into their new football stadium this year right there on the river. Now, not that spring game attendance is a sign for anything, but is there any reason why I look at Baylor's 3,750 attendees at their spring game and go, it's kind of hard for me to buy in that's a real football program if you can't get 4,000 people to your spring game? Or is that just kind of an aberration because of the whole, smaller Baptist school located in Waco, Texas?
Yeah, I wouldn't base it on that. A lot of their, like you said, they're drawing a lot of people from out of town to come to their games every Saturday. The new stadium's not ready yet. Obviously they can't go 5-6, 5-7, 6-6 every year and expect to get the type of crowds they've gotten. But I wouldn't base it off that. I think that new stadium is just going to be awesome for them. Art Briles talks about all the time. If you're driving from Dallas to Austin, to College Station, to San Antonio, up down that 35, it's right. You literally cannot miss it. It's right there. It's going to be a huge recruiting tool for them, I think.
All right, I want to ask you, as we move into 2014, it's really a year of the unknown as we start a 14 playoff, the college football playoffs. I still can't believe they paid money to come up with that name. But what are some things you begin to watch for? Because, that's really the unknown. We don't know what the selection committee is going to view. I mean, so if you were a coach or as you are, got your finger on the media, What's some changes that are going to hit you come August 28th as they kick off those first Thursday night games?
I think one thing I'm going to be watching very closely from my perspective is what type of stats that they value, because traditional stats like total yardage that have been valued forever, the advanced stats people really don't look. They look at that like the RBI in baseball. But you have a lot of old school guys. It's all old school people on this committee, so it's going to be very interesting to see. I think that's going to drive a lot of younger, more plugged-in fans crazy, and then I can't wait to see how it folds out.
Zach, let me move back to Texas real quick, and we'll ask you about the SEC. But tell me, as a Texas guy down there, and you specifically being Longhorn guy, how big has this SEC footprint, so to speak, how big has this gotten in and around Texas with Texas A&M entering the SEC?
I'll tell you, in my 15 years of sports consciousness, now that UT and A&M aren't playing each other, I can't remember the rivalry ever being hotter than it is right now. Like, I think in the minds of most people my age, Oklahoma has always been the chief rival for Texas, and now that those schools have kind of allied with each other to save the Big 12, and A&M's kind of gone off the SEC and seen immediate success, I think UT and A&M have seen themselves as absolute just arch enemies, and I don't know if playing helps that or hurts that in the long run, but the next time they do play each other, it'll be the biggest thing that happened in the state since the last Cowboys Super Bowl. Now, I think in Houston is where it's really, I think Houston has turned more towards the SEC. Obviously, you're closer to the SEC footprint right there, and that's the largest city in the state, obviously. I think Dallas still leans more towards Big 12, but I think Houston and San Antonio are the bigger battlegrounds.
Well, let me stay in the SEC West, and while we're out west, what do you think of the SEC West this coming season? Is it going to be another iron showdown between Auburn and Alabama? Do you see that in your mind? Is Texas A&M going to have a say in this thing? What do you think about the SEC West as we sit here right now heading into the season?
I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if A&M's in the thick of things. I think LSU's kind of gotten overlooked the last couple of years. They still have a stacked roster. I don't know if things fall together for them. The vibe that we got last December, kind of as last season was winding down, is that the Alabama coaches didn't really feel like they had a team up to the standards of the last 2 years. They kind of thought they would take a step back, but that was before Jacob Coker came along. So I think I would classify him as possibly the most important player in the entire conference right now. Auburn, everybody says they're going to be better, and I think they will be, but I just look back to the way they won so many games last year and think that can't possibly continue. That said, Gus Malzahn's an absolute wizard, and I believe in anything he does.
So basically, you're saying that there may have been an off-season golden horseshoe ectomy down in Auburn with a couple of ways their games ended back in November.
I think the Earth will continue as it is for the next 10 million years, and you'll never see two games in like that in back-to-back weeks. Yeah.
All right, Zach, tell our listeners what y'all are working on at footballscoop.com, what they can find out about your great website when they come to see it. And, again, we mentioned they can follow you on Twitter at Zach_Barnett because, quite frankly, this is what y'all do. 365 is college football or football.
Exactly. Our site is built on coaching transactions. We get 99.9 of our information from coaches, for coaches. Obviously, that stuff is hot October, November, December, January. But right now, Scott and I are both taking visits to campuses across the country. He just went to Texas Tech last week. I think he's got some Oklahoma trips lined up soon. He was at LSU a couple weeks. So it's totally for the coaches, so it's kind of inside the machine of college football. It's really fun.
Well, listen, when you make your trek through the South, please keep us in mind. We'll treat you to an excellent meal right here at Smoke on the Water, our sponsor for Straight Up with Sturge. It's kind of hard to get better in this place. So thanks for your time tonight. Look forward to checking in with you in the future, and enjoy another weekend of spring games coming up this weekend.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for having me.
All right, we
Thanks,
really
Zach.
appreciate it. Thank you. That's Zach Barnett, the one of the college football writers for footballscoop.com, and again, very good website. It was kind of ironic as we were going about our process for interviews and everything that we get a writer, and he's like, I'm not, I'm based out of Texas, and we were kind of looking around the landscape of college football, yet maybe, possibly the biggest story in the game of college football this afternoon took place right here in the upstate.
Yeah, it's you get a little perspective sometimes from, not right in our wheelhouse here in the southeast. Texas, they play some pretty good football down there, and
you think?
You can say what you will, but while we had a lot of attention today, the college football world with the news over in Clemson. I mean, a lot of this offseason has been, Johnny Manziel, Charlie Strong hire. They've had a lot happening down in Texas, so always good to get a little perspective from somebody outside the area, outside looking in, to see what they see through the Clemson lens.